Well, I thought it was a good form of flattery. I think it's something that the lawyers are going to discuss. I'm very happy that they love me.
Some black celebrities died in the most hideous way and would have taken the secrets of their final moments straight to the grave. But their last photos gave everything away. Some knew death was already coming and still stood in front of that camera and smiled. Others were already gone on the inside long before their bodies quit. Some were hiding something terrible happening to them that nobody around them caught. Every single one of these final photos had something we completely missed when they first posted them. These were people who suffered in ways the world never fully saw. And when you see what their last photos were actually hiding, it will break you. Bob Marley. The first thing people said when they saw Bob's photo wasn't he looks sick, it wasn't he looks thin. They said, that doesn't look like him. Bob Marley was more than a musician. He was a physical symbol, the dreadlocks, the spirit. When people looked at Bob Marley, they didn't just see an artist, they saw what it looked like to be fully, powerfully alive. So, when the final photo emerged, taken on April 28, 1981, the grief wasn't only about what had been lost. It was about what was no longer recognizable. He weighed 35 kilograms. His face was sunken, his cheeks hollowed out as if everything beneath them had been slowly removed. His skin had darkened with illness, and the dreadlocks were gone, taken by the treatment meant to save him. He looked like a malnourished teenager. The cancer had started as a small black spot beneath his toenail in 1977. He'd been told to amputate the toe. His Rastafari beliefs would not allow it. By the time he arrived at Dr. Joseph Eisel's clinic in Germany, the disease had moved far beyond any door that could be shut. 8 months of ozone therapy, blood transfusions, strict diets, experimental vaccines. His body received everything medicine could offer and gave back less and less in return. But look at his eyes in that photo. Even now, even in a body reduced to almost nothing, there is something still burning in them, a calm, a knowing. His spirit had not gone quiet, even as everything around it was failing. He spent his final days in pain, far from his family, far from Jamaica, the country he loved. On May 11th, 1981, they put him on a plane to bring him home for his final days. He never made it. Somewhere over the Atlantic, his body gave way. The plane made an emergency landing in Miami, and that was where it ended. In a city that wasn't his, surrounded by people doing everything they could. On a journey home he never completed. His last words spoken to his son Ziggy before he lost consciousness were 4 words that landed like a quiet earthquake. Money can't buy life. He was 36 years old. He never saw Jamaica again. James Brown. In the final photo seen of him, James Brown looks like a king. Gold casket, blue suit, hair perfectly styled. Roses piled high around him like a celebration. Thousands of people stood in lines outside the Apollo Theater in Harlem just to walk past and see him one last time. If you didn't know the full story, you might think that image was a triumph. But behind that perfect gleaming image was a man who died alone, on Christmas morning, with no family in the room. James Brown was the godfather of funk, the hardest working man in show business. He performed more shows in more cities, with more relentless energy than almost any artist who ever lived. And yet, in his final days, at 73 years old, the world had grown very still and very quiet around him. He was sick. Diabetes, prostate cancer, the accumulated weight of decades of hard living. But even then, even as his body was betraying him, he was still organizing Christmas gift giveaways for poor children in Atlanta. That was James Brown in December 2006. Still giving, still showing up, still the man who believed he owed the world something. On December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas, he was admitted to Emory Crawford Long Hospital. His heart was failing. His lungs were filling with fluid. The lab results came back and found cocaine in his system. Doctors stabilized him briefly, and then on Christmas morning at 1:45 a.m., his heart stopped. And the only person in that room with him was his personal manager. 5 days later, his body lay in that gold-plated casket at the Apollo. The blue suit, the roses, the carefully made-up face that looked almost exactly as it always had. and tens of millions of dollars worth of estate waiting outside in the hands of lawyers. Because behind the glamour of that casket was a man who had almost no cash left when he died. Mountains of debt, property disputes, a legacy being pulled apart before he was even in the ground. The photo made fans cry because it looked like a send-off fit for a king. The truth made them cry harder, because kings aren't supposed to die alone on Christmas morning while the world is asleep. Chadwick Boseman. While you were watching the video Chadwick Boseman posted on April 15th, 2020, you probably went to the comments. And in those comments, people were asking why he looked so thin. A few said things that were unkind. Some said he was overdoing the weight loss thing for an upcoming role he possibly had. Others told him point blank that he needed to eat. None of them knew they were looking at a man who had been fighting stage 4 cancer in secret for 4 years. None of them knew this was the last time they would ever see him. The video was a tribute to Jackie Robinson, a man Boseman had once played on screen with the full force of his gift. And in the video, he announced that he was donating $4.2 million to hospitals serving Black communities during the pandemic. Behind the camera was a man whose body was being destroyed from the inside, who had come to that moment through years of chemotherapy. His face in that video is something people still find hard to watch. The cheeks deeply hollowed, the body lost inside oversized clothing as if his frame had quietly retreated, his voice faltering now, catching, sometimes breaking mid-sentence. And yet, his eyes were completely steady. Whatever was happening to his body, his eyes had made a different decision. Since 2016, he had known that he had stage 3 colorectal cancer, but instead of slowing down, he ran toward the work. Black Panther, Daw 5 Bloods, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, filmed while on chemotherapy, delivering a performance so deep and full that it earned him a posthumous Golden Globe nomination. He went to set in pain. He performed in pain. He kept the secret so completely that people who worked beside him didn't know. By the time of that April video, the cancer was stage 4, terminal. He knew, his wife knew, his family knew, and still he sat in front of a camera and gave his last public breath to a donation, to a tribute, to someone else. On August 28, 2020, he died at home in Los Angeles. He was 43 years old, surrounded by his family. When the news broke, people went back to the video. They watched it again. And this time, when they looked at his face, the hollow cheeks, the fragile frame, the unbroken eyes, they finally understood what they had been looking at. King Von. There are 2 photos of King Von that are 1 week apart. In the first one, he's at a party. He's laughing, the kind that takes over your whole face and your shoulders and won't stop. His eyes are bright. In the second photo, taken on November 9th, 2020, he is on an autopsy table. Long stitches cross his body. His face holds no expression. The contrast between the 2 images, the same human being, the same week, is something people who saw both have never been able to unsee. King Von was 26 years old. He rapped about the streets because he had lived in them, survived them, and tried to find a way through them while carrying a target he never fully escaped. On the night of November 6th, 2020, King Von and his group arrived outside the Monaco Hookah Lounge in Atlanta from a nightclub. There, an argument broke out. It escalated fast. Gunshots cut through the late-night quiet. King Von was hit multiple times. He was rushed to the hospital. All efforts failed. 2 other people also died that night. Several more were wounded. And on November 9th, the autopsy photo leaked, published without permission, without regard for his family or his memory. The stitches, the stillness, the horror movie rawness of it. The outrage was immediate. People called it a desecration, and they were right. But the photo also forced a reckoning, because King Von had been telling us what his life was like from the very beginning. The stories in his music were messages. His daughter will grow up in a world where both of those photos exist, the laughing one and the other one, both of them available to anyone with a phone. That is the part that follows you long after the video ends. Otis Redding. Otis's final photo is black and white, which somehow makes it colder. A small boat on a dark lake, ice floating across the surface in jagged pieces. and there they found him. The rescuers were leaning so far over the edge of the boat, they looked like they were about to tip into the water themselves. They finally pulled him up, but he was just a small, motionless weight in his soaked, dark clothes. It was Otis Redding. The seatbelt was still strapped across him, his face expressionless. He was 26 years old. Otis Redding was the king of soul, a voice so full and so human it seemed to bypass the ears entirely and go straight into the chest. He made the kind of music that makes strangers cry in public without feeling embarrassed about it. He was at the absolute peak of his life and career on December 10th, 1967, when disaster struck. He boarded a Beechcraft H-18 with his band, the Bar-Kays, heading to Madison, Wisconsin. The weather was wrong, freezing, gray, the sky low and hostile. The plane descended toward Lake Monona and then, in a terrible and instant moment, plunged into it at roughly a 35-degree angle. 7 people died. Only one band member survived, Ben Cawley, who clung to a seat cushion in the freezing dark and later said he heard the others calling out around him before the voices went quiet one by one. 3 days before the crash, Otis Redding had recorded Sittin' on the Dock of the Bay, the song that would define him. The song is about a man watching the water. He never heard it released. He never knew it would reach #1. He never saw what it became, one of the most recognized songs in the history of American music. J. Dilla. J. Dilla didn't have to be on his final European tour. His body was in no condition to be on a stage. His hands were trembling. He needed a wheelchair to move. The baseball cap on his head was 2 sizes too big, sitting on a face that disease had hollowed out until it barely resembled the man his fans had followed for years. But on December 16, 2005, he was on that stage, sitting in that wheelchair, in that oversized jacket he wore, as if trying to hide what was disappearing underneath it. Because he wasn't finished yet. Because if he could be there, he was going to be there. That photo is the last image most people have of him alive. James Yancey, J. Dilla, was one of the greatest music producers who ever lived. He made music that felt like memory. From 2005, his life began falling apart. 2 diseases began dismantling him at once: lupus and TTP, thrombotic thrombocytopenic purpura, a condition that causes blood clots to form throughout the body, destroys red blood cells, and produces a kind of internal suffering that is invisible until very late. His body was being taken apart from within. The pain never stopped. His breathing grew labored. His weight collapsed. He was anemic, frail, skeletal, and he kept making music. His MPC drum machine and his mixer were brought into his hospital room at Cedars-Sinai. In a stark white space full of machines and IV lines, he finished the album Donuts. He lay in that bed at night, listening to the sounds he had made, letting them move through a body that was moving toward its end. Donuts was released on February 7, 2006, J. Dilla's 32nd birthday. He received copies of it in the hospital. He held the physical album in his hands. 3 days later, on February 10th, he was gone, taken by the 2 diseases that plagued him. The music world he had quietly built, the one that only fully recognized his genius after he left it, received Donuts as a masterpiece. He never got to see that. He never got to know what those sounds became when the world finally heard them properly. He was 32, he made it to his birthday. He held the album, and then he let go. Prince. Paisley Park was Prince's world. He built it so he would never have to leave. Recording studios, performance spaces, everything sealed and controlled and entirely his. A place where he could exist entirely on his own terms. In the photo from April 16, 2016, he's riding a silver bicycle through the fortress grounds. He looks smaller than you'd ever expect, draped in black, his posture broken and stripped of its former confidence. Every rotation of the pedals demands far more than his fragile frame has left to give. He had taken pain medication before the ride. That detail matters. Prince had been performing at an extraordinary physical level for 4 decades. The splits, the heels. But decades of that kind of performance leave a cost in the bones and the joints and the spine. By early 2016, the pain in his hip and back had become something he could no longer manage without help. And the help he had turned to was fentanyl, the synthetic opioid that was, in 2016, already killing tens of thousands of Americans, and that would kill him too. What makes the bicycle photo unbearable is this. It was taken the day after he had nearly died. On April 15, 2016, Prince's plane made an emergency landing in Moline, Illinois. He had been found unresponsive. He was given Narcan, the drug used to reverse opioid overdoses, and revived. He walked into a pharmacy shortly after, and the next day he got on a bicycle and rode through Paisley Park in the afternoon light. The night before his death, he was seen at a Walgreens, thin, face tense, eyes carrying something anxious behind them. He was buying painkillers. It was the third box that month. On April 21st, 2016, Kirk Johnson, with two others, broke into the elevator of Paisley Park. Kirk was a longtime employee and friend. He found Prince on the floor, unresponsive. The cause was later confirmed as a fentanyl overdose. The man who had built a fortress to protect himself died inside it, alone, in an elevator, in the building he owned, and the last photo of him alive shows him riding through that world slowly in the afternoon, already unreachable. He was 57. Whitney Houston. Whitney Houston's final viewing was supposed to be private, family only, but someone in that room had a phone, and by the next morning, Whitney Houston was on the front page of the National Enquirer, in her casket, in a purple dress, gold slippers placed neatly on her feet, sparkling jewelry at her throat. The photo spread at a speed that felt almost violent. Within hours, it was everywhere. She had spent her final months alone in a dark room, watching videos of who she used to be. And then someone put her on a front page. Whitney Houston's voice was not simply a great voice. She owned every stage she ever stood on. She made the world stop and listen. And by early 2012, that voice, along with the heart that powered it and the lungs that carried it, had been quietly destroyed. She was found on February 11, 2012, in room 434 of the Beverly Hilton Hotel, in the bathtub. The cause was accidental drowning, combined with heart disease and cocaine use. She had been in the water for a significant amount of time before she was discovered. The woman who had filled the largest arenas on Earth died alone in a hotel bathroom on the afternoon before a Grammy Awards party she was supposed to attend. In the casket photo, she is peaceful. The purple dress, the gold slippers, the careful makeup, the flowers. Her family was furious. Fans were devastated. The violation of photographing a woman during a private family farewell, of selling that image, of turning her final moment of peace into a tabloid cover. It was a specific kind of cruelty. She couldn't have privacy in life. She didn't get it in death. And the deeper wound, the one that never quite closes, is this. 3 years later, her daughter Bobby Christina was found face down in a bathtub in a suburban Atlanta home. She never regained consciousness. She died 6 months later. Mother and daughter. The same way. The same kind of room. 2 women. 2 bathtubs. And a grief that passes understanding. Jimi Hendrix. Look at Jimi Hendrix's eyes in his photo. A small garden behind a London apartment. Soft afternoon light. Green trees, the kind of scene that belongs in a painting. Jimi Hendrix sits at a tea table, his beloved Fender Stratocaster resting in his hands. But his eyes are not looking at anything. They are aimed at the ground. His shoulders have dropped. The posture of a man who has been carrying something too heavy for too long and is no longer sure he can hold it. The sharpness that lived in him on stage, that electric aliveness, in this photo, taken on September the 17th, 1970, it is gone. He is 27 years old. In a few hours, he will be dead. The pressure had been building for months. Contracts, lawsuits, disputes with his former manager over money and ownership and control, a touring schedule that had left his body completely drained and his mind running on borrowed fumes. He had started relying on sleeping pills and alcohol just to find a few hours of rest. The more he took, the further his body slid from anything that resembled stability. That night, he returned from a long day of shows. He took sleeping pills. He took too many. In a state where he could no longer control his body, he choked. No one intervened in time. But there is a detail the world mostly doesn't know. In the hours before the garden photo, he wrote a poem, The Story of Life. He gave it to his girlfriend, Monica Danneman, the woman in whose apartment he would die. Those who later read the poem described it as something that sounded less like art and more like a goodbye. He went into the garden. He sat at the table. Someone took a photo. The guitar was in his hands and the light was soft, and his eyes were somewhere else entirely. Eazy-E. Months before his final photo was taken, Eazy-E was untouchable, running ruthless records, the sunglasses, the hat, the stance. He had made gangster rap visible to the entire country, and he wore that achievement like armor. Then came the hospital. The IV lines, the machines, a face that the people who knew him said they barely recognized. In late February 1995, Eric Wright was admitted to Cedars-Sinai with what seemed at first like pneumonia, high fever, severe cough, breathing that had become a struggle. The test results arrived and changed everything. He wasn't battling pneumonia, he was battling end-stage AIDS. And his body, which had been fighting without his knowledge for long, had almost nothing left to fight with. The deterioration was catastrophic in its speed. Within days, strange bruises bloomed across his skin. His weight fell away. His immune system, already destroyed, could no longer protect him from anything. Every breath required effort. He lay in a white hospital room, surrounded by machines, and the quiet hum of equipment working harder than his body could. Someone took a photo. In it, Eazy-E looks like a man twice his age who has already begun to leave. The face that had looked out from album covers with iron certainty was now gaunt, the eyes sunken, the skin pale with the particular pallor of severe illness. Exhaustion lived in every part of that image and couldn't be hidden or undone. He was 30 years old. A month earlier, he had been in the studio. Before he died, he released a statement from that hospital bed. He confirmed his diagnosis. He urged his fans to practice safe sex. He said he wanted to turn his own suffering into something that might protect someone else. He gave his last coherent public words to a warning, and then, just hours after that statement went out, on March 26, 1995, he was gone. Michael Jackson. On June 24, 2009, you can watch him dance. The footage exists. He is in rehearsal for the This Is It concert series. 50 shows, sold out, the largest comeback tour in music history. He had never left the top, and the footage proves it. 36 hours later, that photo was taken. The one released at the murder trial in 2011. His body on a hospital gurney, thin beyond what most people expected, pale, eyes closed tight. No trace of the man who had just been dancing. Michael Jackson's final months were not the months of a king. Inside his Holmby Hills mansion, preparing for This Is It, he could barely sleep. The only thing that brought him rest was propofol, a powerful surgical anesthetic, administered in a bedroom by a doctor who had been hired specifically because no other physician would sanction what was being done. Dr. Conrad Murray was paid $150,000 a month to help Michael Jackson sleep. His body was down to approximately 136 pounds. His stomach, when examined after death, was nearly empty, containing only partially digested pills. He was severely malnourished. He used a wheelchair inside his own home because of dizziness. And yet he went into rehearsal and proved night after night that the gift had never left. He fell sometimes. He got up and kept going. On June 25, 2009, the propofol was administered. His breathing stopped. He was rushed to the hospital. Everything that could be done was done. It wasn't enough. His 3 children were in the house that morning. Paris Jackson was 11 years old. She later said she witnessed the resuscitation attempts on her father. The gurney photo circulated everywhere. What Paris carried out of that house that morning circulates nowhere. It belongs only to her. Aretha Franklin. Someone chose the red dress. Someone chose the gold heels. Christian Louboutin, because Aretha Franklin would have expected nothing less. Someone arranged everything in that gold casket with the specific care of people who were refusing to let pancreatic cancer have the final word about what Aretha Franklin looked like when she left. The photo was released on August 28, 2018, 12 days after her death. Aretha Franklin was the queen of soul. Her voice had done things in civil rights meeting halls and concert stages and living rooms that changed the direction of people's lives. She sang at the funeral of Martin Luther King Jr. She sang at Barack Obama's inauguration. And when pancreatic cancer came for her, it came slowly and it came without mercy. In her final months, she spent most of her time on a large sofa in her Bloomfield Hills mansion. The television played her old performances. She had stopped performing publicly in 2017. When she had the strength, she went to her small home studio and recorded. She made music until doing so became physically impossible. She died on August 16, 2018, in her own bedroom, surrounded by her family. She was 76. After she was gone, something was discovered in her home. 3 handwritten wills, legal documents written by hand, contradicting each other. A legal battle among her 4 sons followed that lasted for years. Kobe Bryant. Look at the final photo. He is not in his Lakers jersey or on court. Kobe is standing on the sideline of a practice gym at the Mamba Sports Academy, hands quiet at his sides, watching his daughter play basketball. It is January 25th, 2020. One day later, they are both on a helicopter, and then neither of them comes home. Kobe Bryant had given everything to basketball for 20 years, 5 championships, 2 Olympic gold medals, a career built on a standard of discipline and will that other players studied like a text. And then he retired and became something different, a father who showed up, a coach who poured into his daughter the same obsessive dedication he had once poured into himself. Gianna Bryant was 13. She had been called Mamba Cheetah, Little Mamba, by her father, who said openly that she was going to carry the family's basketball legacy further than he had. She didn't want to play like him. She wanted to surpass him. She had his shooting form. She had his eyes on the court. She had his everything. On the morning of January 26, 2020, they boarded a Sikorsky S-76 helicopter together, heading to practice. The sky over Calabasas was covered in thick fog. Visibility was near zero. Police helicopters had been grounded. The pilot, Ara Zobayan, experienced, trusted, a man who had flown Kobe many times, had received a special waiver to fly. He climbed into the clouds and then, in the fog, became disoriented. He didn't know the helicopter was descending. He was trying to climb when it hit the hillside. 9 people died. Kobe, Gianna, 7 others, including 13-year-old Alyssa Altabelli and both of her parents. 3 members of one family gone in the same moment. Takeoff. In his group, he was the quiet one. Takeoff was the one who let the music do the talking. He didn't want to be the loudest. He wanted to be the best. And the people who understood rap had started saying, louder and louder in the months before he died, that he was exactly that. The best one. The one the world had been sleeping on. In the final photo, he is standing outside a bowling alley in Houston. Nothing that suggests anything other than a man at a party on a Tuesday night, comfortable in his own quiet. A gun went off. Ann Kersnick-Kari Ball, Takeoff, 1/3 of Migos, 28 years old, was on the ground. It was November 1st, 2022. A dispute broke out near a dice game. Takeoff was not involved in the dispute. He was nearby. A bullet that was not meant for him found him anyway. He was shot in the head and torso. He was pronounced dead at the scene. His uncle Quavo was there. They had performed together for years, built Migos together, built careers together, made music that defined an era together. Quavo stayed with him after the shooting. He held him while everything ended. Quavo later released a song called Without You. If you listen to it, you understand that some grief doesn't have a shape that fits into words. He found some anyway. Takeoff had just started receiving the individual recognition that his talent had always warranted. His groupmates were famous. He was the one people were finally beginning to call exceptional. The world had just found him. He was 28. He was the best one. and the world figured that out too late. Nipsey Hussle. The photo was taken outside Nipsey's own store, the parking lot of the Marathon clothing store on Slauson Avenue in Los Angeles, the block he had come back to on purpose, with money and intention and a plan to rebuild from the inside out. On March 31st, 2019, Ermias Asghedom, Nipsey Hussle, stood in that parking lot in the afternoon sun, talking to people, being present in the neighborhood the way he always was. And then a man named Eric Holder walked up and shot him multiple times. Nipsey Hussle was 33 years old. He died outside the business he had built, on the street he had grown up on, in front of the community he had spent years trying to save. The Marathon clothing store was a declaration that South Los Angeles deserved investment and dignity and someone willing to stay and fight for it. He had just signed a meeting with the city of Los Angeles to discuss gang violence prevention. The meeting was scheduled for the day after he was killed. The day before he died, he had posted on his Instagram, "Having strong enemies is a blessing." The final photo shows a man standing outside his store on a Sunday afternoon. Relaxed, home. The people around him are smiling. He is exactly where he chose to be. His daughter was 2 years old. His son was 10. His partner Lauren London had been with him for years. The neighborhood that watched him grow up lined the streets of Los Angeles for miles on the day of his memorial. People stood for hours just to be present for him, the way he had been present for them. The thing he built is still there, carrying his name, because some things outlast even the cruelest endings. Pop Smoke. He posted that last photo himself. 20-year-old Bashar Baraka Jackson, Pop Smoke, posted a photo on his Instagram story of the house he was staying in, a rented mansion in the Hollywood Hills. The address was visible in the image. He didn't know. He was 20. He was excited. He had just filmed for a magazine. He was in Los Angeles, living the life that the music had made possible. He posted the photo the way anyone his age would, to show where he was, to share the moment, to let the world in. Someone saw it. They knew the address. And in the early hours of February 19th, 2020, 4 people broke into the house. Pop Smoke was shot during the home invasion. He was taken to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. He was pronounced dead at 5 a.m. His debut album, Shoot for the Stars, Aim for the Moon, was released posthumously 4 months later. It went to #1. His voice filled speakers across the world. Fans who had not known his name in February knew it by June. He had been taken before his career had even fully begun. The magazine shoot he had done before his death was released after it. In those photos, he looks every part the star he was becoming. Confident, present, powerful. The jump between who he was in those photos and the fact of what happened hours after he posted from that house is a distance that fans still struggle to cross. The innocence of that, the pure, ordinary, youthful innocence of sharing where you are because you're proud and happy and don't yet know that the world contains people who would use that information to end you, is what makes fans cry. Lisa Left Eye Lopes. Lisa knew something was coming and said so on camera days before she died. In April 2002, Lisa Lopes was in Honduras on a personal retreat. She brought a camera crew. She filmed everything. And in the footage taken in the days before her death, she looked directly into the camera and said that she felt she had narrowly escaped death, that something had nearly taken her. She was 30 years old. She had one of the most recognizable faces in music. She was Left Eye of TLC, the fiery, unpredictable, brilliant third of one of the best-selling female groups of all time. On April 25th, 2002, she was in a vehicle with 8 other people, driving on a rural road. The driver swerved to avoid hitting a child who had run into the road. The vehicle lost control and rolled. Lisa was the only person who died. Everyone else survived. She had been filming in the car. The camera kept recording for a moment after the crash, and somewhere in the footage she left behind, she had already said goodbye without knowing that's what she was doing. The final photo of her alive, from the documentary footage, shows a woman who is fully present. She looks like someone in the middle of a conversation she hasn't finished yet. She never finished it. The footage she left behind became a documentary, and the people who have watched it describe the experience as sitting with someone who is already gone but doesn't know it yet. Tupac Shakur. The photo from that night has become one of the most studied images in music history. It was taken casually at a boxing match on September the 7th, 1996 in Las Vegas. Tupac Shakur was 25 years old. He was at the MGM Grand that night to watch Mike Tyson fight Bruce Seldon, surrounded by friends and associates. He was one of the most famous people on the planet. He had just finished filming. He had albums coming. In the photo, he is alive in the way that Tupac was always alive, fully, loudly, with his whole body. He is not holding anything back. He never did. After the fight, a brawl broke out in the lobby of the MGM Grand involving a member of the Crips. Tupac was involved. The energy from that altercation followed the group out into the Las Vegas night. Later, while driving in a BMW sedan headed to a club, a white Cadillac pulled alongside the vehicle. Multiple gunshots. Tupac was hit 4 times, twice in the chest, once in the arm, once in the thigh. He was rushed to the University Medical Center of Southern Nevada. He survived the initial surgery. He fought for 6 days. He was 25, his body was strong, and the people around him believed that he would make it. On September 13th, 1996, he died. He had been to prison. He had been shot before. He had made music about mortality with the authority of someone who had looked it in the face and kept writing anyway. And still, that night in Las Vegas, he didn't know it was the last night. Nobody ever does. DMX. The goodbye with DMX happened slowly, in public, over years, and that is what made it so much harder to carry. Fans watched him struggle. They watched a man of extraordinary spiritual force and extraordinary talent be taken apart by addiction in front of the entire world. And they loved him through all of it. They never stopped. Earl Simmons, DMX, was one of the most singular artists hip-hop has ever produced. He made albums that felt like confession and battle cries at the same time. He brought people into the most raw and difficult parts of himself, and they stayed. Because he was real in a way that couldn't be manufactured and that made everything he touched feel like it mattered. On April 2nd, 2021, he suffered a cardiac arrest at his home in White Plains, New York. He was found without a pulse. He was placed on life support. The cause was a drug overdose. For a week, his family gathered. Fans gathered outside the hospital. People prayed. People posted old videos. On April 9th, 2021, Earl Simmons died. He was 50 years old. The final photos of him, from his last public appearances, show a man who still carried the size of his spirit even when his body showed the weight of everything he had been through. He smiled. He performed. Trayvon Martin. This is the one that changes everything. Trayvon Martin was not a celebrity. He was a 17-year-old boy from Miami Gardens, Florida, who walked to a convenience store to buy Skittles and an iced tea and was shot and killed on the way back. George Zimmerman shot him on February 26, 2012, in a Sanford, Florida neighborhood, and initially faced no arrest. In the grief and rage that followed, his mother, Sabrina Fulton, made a decision about which image the world would see. Other photos of Trayvon were already circulating online, photos that made him look older and more intimidating. Sabrina rejected all of them. She chose a photo of him smiling in a hoodie and gave it directly to news outlets so that every TV channel, every protest sign would carry the same image. She controlled the story before the media could frame it for her. And in that innocent photo, he looked nothing like what the public was calling him. That photo became one of the most recognized images in American history. Trayvon had been on a phone call with his girlfriend, Rachel Jantel, as he walked back through the neighborhood. He noticed he was being followed and told her he was scared. Those were the last words she heard from him before the line went silent. Zimmerman was charged 44 days after the shooting, only after the case became a national crisis. Trayvon Martin did not take the final photo. It was taken of him while he was alive and smiling and not knowing. His mother kept it, and when the time came, she gave it to the world.